Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Let's talk about a fight that already happened, but it's worth talking about because it's a great performance by a great fighter. It's what separates the technicians of the sport from everyone else. It is Sergio Martinez's victory over previously unbeaten Serhiy Dzinziruk. Now, understand, both of these fighters are technically inclined. They both fight out of a southpaw stance. They're both lefties. So what that means is that their lead hand is their right hand. And their dominant hand, theoretically, would be their left hand, right? You're left hand dominant, theoretically, if you're fighting out of a southpaw stance. Here, though, Sergio Martinez, who famously knocked out Paul Williams by creating a trap in the second round of that fight in the rematch, where he literally is just setting up a left hook. If you watch the sequence before that knockout punch, you'll see Martinez is busy keeping his feet apart, prepared to throw the left hand a good 5 seconds before he actually throws the punch. In other words, as Williams comes forward and Martinez is backing up, Martinez has only one thing on his mind, and it's to get leverage on the left hook that ends that fight. So we already know that Martinez is ahead of the game. He comes in the ring with an agenda. He's literally just trying to frame it. Now here, it's fascinating because Sergey Dzinziruk has one of the best right jabs in all of boxing, right? It's such an effective punch that he had more than 20 knockouts, right? He's known for tight defense, a great jab. People have problems with it. But I believe, and I mentioned this on my pre-fight video, which is on YouTube, I believe if you look at Dzinziruk carefully, you're going to see that he might be an inverted southpaw. In other words, he might actually be a right-handed fighter fighting out of a southpaw stance. The reason I say that, while this car alarm goes off in the background, the reason I say that is because Dzinziruk doesn't have much of a left hand, even though he's fighting out of the southpaw stance. Rather, his whole game seems to be to bludgeon you with his dominant hand, right? And I know this is not online. This is just my observation looking at film. His game seems to be to bludgeon you with his dominant hand, which in my opinion is his right hand, and he does so by shooting a right jab. Right then, of course, after he batters you with his dominant hand and you leap in, he has excellent defense. Right? He knows how to cover up well. Martinez, an elite fighter. We're talking about top of the game, right? If you're going to talk about the best pound for pound, you have to include Sergio Martinez in the conversation when you're mentioning Floyd, Nonito, Manny, the elites, right? Sergio Martinez comes into this fight, and like Ray Leonard did against another converted southpaw, Marvin Hagler, who was really right-handed, masquerading as a southpaw, right? Martinez realizes that because he's inverted, because just like you have a dominant hand, you have a dominant foot, Dzinziruk wasn't going to be able to move around the ring as well as Martinez was. Martinez had the superior lateral movement. More importantly, he realized that if he could counter, and I think he realized this before the fight, right? Luck is where preparation meets opportunity. I believe Martinez realized that he could counter Dzinziruk's jab. And because the jab was Dzinziruk's dominant hand, there was nothing behind it. In other words, if the jab was Dzinziruk's non-dominant hand, he would have a dominant left hand behind it. So Dzinziruk would be able to play games. In other words, as Martinez tried to counter his right jab, Dzinziruk would be able to feint the jab, then come across with a left hand, right? Martinez wouldn't be able to jump inside because even if he slipped the jab, there would still be the dangerous punch behind the jab, right? It's like fighting Vladimir Klitschko. Vladimir Klitschko has an excellent left jab. He's an orthodox fighter, right? He has an excellent left jab, but if you slip that left jab, Vladimir Klitschko has a right hand hammer, right? Just slipping the jab on most fighters isn't enough because they have dynamite behind the jab. The jab is just a table setter. The real meal is the dominant hand behind it. Unless, of course, you're Sergio Dzinziruk. So here you have an interesting one where Martinez comes out and he decides to counter one of the best jabbers in the entire sport. So he's far outside. He's allowing Dzinziruk to throw the jab. He leans in right after Dzinziruk throws the jab, and he then hits Dzinziruk with 2, 3 jabs, right? He's literally timed Dzinziruk, where when Dzinziruk's extended with that right hand, he comes in and hits Dzinziruk. Then I believe he confirms what he already suspects. Dzinziruk doesn't have the left hand behind the jab. Of course, Martinez has a left hand behind his jab. Both of these guys are southpaws. Martinez is the real southpaw, right? He's not inverted. So after Martinez realizes that he can land, his right hand counters between Dzinziruk's jabs, right? Then he actually starts coming inside and landing his left hand. Dzinziruk, because he's throwing his dominant hand, can't even feint the jab and then throw a right hand, right? Rather, Dzinziruk stuck. His game is to bludgeon you with his dominant hand, and once you take that away from him, and once you force him to walk around the ring and reset his feet so he could get that punch off, he's finished. I suspect that for gamblers, Dzinziruk will come back with a vengeance against lesser skilled fighters. But against Martinez, whose best weapon is not his lateral movement, it's not his hand speed, it's not his athleticism, it's what's between his ears. For a technician like Martinez, who's combining a mental approach with physical gifts, Martinez was just simply too talented for Dzinziruk, who is an excellent fighter. So I'll be looking for Dzinziruk's next fight. I hope he takes a few months off because this is his first loss. That's emotionally draining. Also, he was knocked down several times. He needs to give his body a chance to heal, right? But when he comes back, I know Dzinziruk is going to beat most of the guys at 154 and 160. In fact, forget 154. He's too big for 154. But I believe Dzinziruk beats most of the guys at 160. I think Dzinziruk against Felix Sturm, that's a fascinating fight. That's a fascinating fight. But he picked the wrong guy in this fight. A guy who literally was able to exploit the fact that he's inverted, in my opinion. I haven't seen this online. I've just looked at his fights. You're talking about a guy who was able to figure out that he could counter the jab and that there was nothing behind it. In fact, if you look at the last 2 knockdowns, you're going to see that Martinez literally jumps in with a left hand is fearless. He knows when he jumps in with the left hand after starting with the jab. He knows there's no right hand. Excuse me. He knows that Dzinziruk doesn't have his own left to catch him clean. In fact, Martinez is so cocky in this fight. He's so certain that Dzinziruk has no left hand to go with that brilliant right jab that in the first round of this fight, about 90 seconds in, you're going to see Martinez drop his hands. Let me also make another point, too. Here in the United States, HBO was saying that, um, Martinez's dropped hands was a tactical mistake and that he wasn't fighting to form. I actually disagree. I know that trainers say, hey, don't drop your hands. When you understand the sport like Sergio Martinez does, dropping your hands allows you to do so much more. Because number one, he's increasing his stamina. He's not wasting energy keeping his hands up, right? He's actually able to drop his hands and conserve his stamina. Number two, I believe it allows him to see more. When you're a thinking man and you're already one of boxing's slickest fighters, the more you can see, the better it is. Martinez only drops his hands, by the way, when he believes he has timed his opponent, right? The other thing, too, is let me just say, when you drop your hands in front of a boxer, it's so outside the box that I believe it actually drains your opponent. In other words, the opponent is, looking for windows of opportunity where he can throw big punches when you're defenseless, right? When you're dropping your hands and you're basically inviting the guy to come at you, I think that causes opponents to hyperventilate, to not know what to do. They might come at you, realize they can't hurt you. They might deplete themselves. They're outside their own pacing. I think when Sergio Martinez drops his hands, guys like Kelly Pavlik, guys like Serhiy Dzinziruk literally are intimidated. They overextend themselves. They get demoralized because they realize that they're timed. They get thrown outside of their game. So, as Bill Russell, the basketball player, used to say, the great ones are always different. Martinez is different, but he knows what he's doing. This was a highly technical performance by an elite fighter against a guy he knew was inverted, who he knew did not have a left hand out of a southpaw stance. Let me know what you think. I'm sure I'm going to hear that Dzinziruk is literally left-handed and signs his name with his left hands. All I can say is I haven't seen him throw a lot of power left hands in his matches, even though he's fighting out of southpaw. And I know it might stun some people to learn that Marvin Hagler was actually a righty masquerading as a left hand. All I could say is take a look at the Ray Leonard fight. You're going to see the genius of Ray Leonard. Leonard sets it up so he takes Marvin Hagler's left hand, right? Because he knows that's his non-dominant hand. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. By the way, Roberto Duran, same thing. In fact, it's Duran who was the person who first tried to set it up so Marvin had to throw his left hand. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here on YouTube. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Hope you enjoyed the fight. Thanks for watching.